Here's how you know college football is a 24/7 year-round sport. 2 weeks ago, the confetti fell in Houston. NRG Stadium was rocking with the maize and blue, and Ann Arbor's been partying like it's 1997. But on the transfer portal side, dude, that thing has a heartbeat of its own, and it is not slowing down anytime soon, especially with the future of Jim Harbaugh up in the air. So I thought, before anybody else commits, why don't I go ahead and lock in my predictions where I think the top names in the transfer portal will land for next season? But before we do that, if you are new here, well, welcome on into the channel, people. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. Simply because the clock has struck zero on 2023 does not mean we will stop making content. We got live shows planned. We're recapping 2023. I'm going to read some of the worst predictions I made for last season, some of the worst predictions you made for last season. And if this is the daily dose of college football you need to survive the dreaded offseason, well, might I recommend you hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me which player from the transfer portal you would like to see strap it up in 2024 for your university. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, your best of bros, college football aficionados, and really anybody that loves the sport about this channel, because we are in the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking college football daily. Why don't you go ahead and follow me on social media while you're at it, at Mr. Cole Thompson, Twitter, X, Instagram. But that way, conversations surrounding our favorite sport never have to stop flowing. By the way, there's a link to my email down below. If you would like to ask me a question about college football, I'll do a full segment on it. So go ahead, send me an email. I love hearing from you people. I love hearing also where you think these players are going to land, because these are difference makers. They are legit studs and could be immediate plug and play replacements for a name that left your team in the offseason. That way, you fortify your chances of making it to the college football playoff or returning to the college football playoff. Let's go ahead and start off with the biggest name out there. It's Caelb Downs from Alabama. Kid is a human highlight reel. In my opinion, he was Alabama's best player. Not offensive player, defensive player, player in general, because the man had over 70 solo tackles and also led the team in tackles with 100 plus. Plus, he can also play in coverage. Plus, he also is great against the run, and he's a physical enforcer. The way that he was described to me from someone on Alabama staff, he's a 19-year-old with an all-pro body, and they said all-pro for a reason. They think that he's already built to make it in the NFL. This is a kid that eventually will strap it up on Sundays and likely be a first-round pick, maybe even a top 10 talent. Where does he land? Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's fire right now in Athens, Georgia. T-Rob, the new defensive back coach in Athens, has a relationship with him. In fact, part of the reason why Caelb Downs even committed to Alabama was because of his relationship with Travarius Robinson. Now he's back in Athens. He already has a working relationship with Kirby Smart, and the kid is close to home. Sometimes the best thing for you is to always return where your heart resides. It just feels like even if Ohio State were to make a push, this is Georgia's to lose. Now you add him with Malachi Starks. Now you fortify the back end of your secondary, and that defense that was kind of sus at times last year is only strengthened to brand new reliefs. I cannot believe that you were going to see a player like Caelb Downs leave one premier program at Alabama only to head across back to go to the other rival in Georgia, and a team that absolutely is trying to go ahead and contend for a national title. Next up, his teammate, Kaydn Proctor. This one's a very easy one for me. Just like Caelb Downs going back to his home state, it would be hard-pressed to think that Kaydn Proctor's going anywhere but Iowa. And the reason behind that isn't because of I think that home is where the heart lies. It's more so, go back and look back at Kaydn Proctor's recruiting assessment. He was committed to the Hawkeyes all the way up to early signing period. Great relationship with Kirk Ferentz. Great relationship with all of those in Des Moines. Great relationship with everyone at Kinnick Stadium. Wanted to be a part of this potential. And then at the last second, he flips and goes to Nick Saban. Saban's gone, so why not go back to where you initially wanted to be? You always thought that you were going to be playing for the black and yellow. You always thought you'd be shooting up at Kinnick Stadium. It just feels like if you were entering the portal, you kind of had a good inclination about where your brain was headed. It just fits the glove. The kid is going to be an emerging superstar. I know a lot of people are talking about his performance in the Rose Bowl. He's a true freshman playing left tackle. He's going to get better. His reps count is going to improve. His pass pro is going to improve. And the one thing that we know about Iowa, death taxes know how to send out offensive tackles to the NFL. Happens every single year, going to continue to happen. Next up, Lance Hurd, offensive tackle from LSU. This is a big name to me, and the main reason why is because he's a young tackle. Usually when you see talent enter the transfer portal, especially on the offensive line, they're veterans. They're guys who are already proven commodities, and usually they're a one-year rental option to better their draft stock. It happens all the time. But when a Caden Green enters the portal, or when a Kaydn Proctor enters the portal, or a Lance Hurd enters the portal, those become hot commodities because of what they can bring for the foreseeable future. This is a staple and a stalwart of your offensive line for at least 2 years, if not longer, especially if they start to hone in on their craft. That only fortifies your roster that much more. I think that Tennessee is going to land them. I really do. I think that the Volunteers realize that their offensive line is good, but it could be much more improved, especially when you have a young quarterback like Nico Iamaleava. You're trying to bolster his stat line. You're trying to make him feel as comfortable as all hell. He wants to be tucked in at night and be able to just dream off about national championships and winning the SEC and being the first quarterback since T. Martin to do all this. That's his thought process. And so what you do, especially if you're Josh Heupel, you give him comfortability after comfortability after comfortability with proven names and upside on the offensive line. Rocky Top is looking to be a contender in 2024. I think that they are absolutely a dark horse to win the SEC, definitely make it to the college football playoff. You want to fortify your chances, you build in the trenches. And that's what you need to do when you're in the SEC and what you need to do when you're in the Big Ten, especially at programs where you think that you might be on the come up, but just to fortify your odds, that's what you do. So I ultimately think Hurd lands Knoxville. Next up, Jabbar Muhammad, cornerback from Washington. There are going to be 3 locations for him, and they'll all make sense. Number 1 is Oregon. Stay on the West Coast, best coast. Go join the Big Ten. Be a part of a program that feels like it's ready to take its next step forward as a legit national championship contender. And also there's veteranship on the offense. There's Alabama. You go reunite with your head coach in Kalen DeBoer and the offensive personnel. It's a new concept a little bit underneath Kane Woolmick, but it is one that could at least make you a viable threat in the SEC, thus making you a viable threat on NFL Sundays. And then there's Texas. Texas, proof of concept, they're going after a certain brand of player, and it feels like that the names that they are targeting are going to be plug-and-play starters. They're missing Ryan Watts. He just left for the NFL. Maybe you don't feel comfortable with Malik Muhammad, the freshman, so you go out and you add in Jabbar Muhammad. Ultimately, I think he goes ahead and commits, my apologies, to the guy that ultimately brought him to Seattle and kept him in Seattle. That'd be Kalen DeBoer. I think he goes to Alabama. They need help on the outside. Kool-Aid McKinstry's going to the NFL. Terrion Arnold's going to the NFL. You add him in, 6'1" cover corner, can immediately be a plug-and-play guy on the outside and fortify your secondary for a new coach who understands the lay of the land of the South and also understands SEC football. If he doesn't go there, I think he does go to Texas, but ultimately, Kalen DeBoer is wise. He's smart above his years. He realizes that they need help on the defensive side, and you got to go with somebody you trust. I trust Jabbar Muhammad to end up at Tuscaloosa. Next up, Trey Amos. He just left Tuscaloosa, senior cornerback, now in the transfer portal. There's a program in the SEC that has ties with Nick Saban, and there's a program in the SEC that's been willing to spend money like no one's business. But they just lost a cornerback to the NFL draft who was supposed to come over and be the last piece de resistance for the secondary. That'd be Ole Miss, and ultimately that's where I think he lands. There's a proof of concept that when you go down to Oxford, you leave better prepared for the NFL. And Amos, he doesn't need to have that much more work done with him. He just needs the chance to go ahead and be a plug-and-play starter. He needs the opportunity to go ahead and strut his stuff on Saturdays and show the world, I was good enough to start. I just was behind 2 really exceptional cornerbacks during my time in T-Town. A place like Ole Miss provides that for him. He understands the relationship because of the time he spent with Pete Golding. So he's automatically a plug-and-play guy that you can trust on the outside. And simply because of you understand concepts doesn't mean it will justifiably make you a bona fide stud, but it doesn't hurt the conscience either. I do think that a guy like Amos would thrive going back to a defensive coordinator he has a working relationship with. 2 more for you. Amari Nick Black from Alabama is now in the transfer portal. And this feels like if one player goes there, another player will go there. And if there's a proof of concept of offense there, you go ahead and commit. This is where I think Texas gets their next tight end. They need help. They just lost Jatavion Sanders to the NFL draft, and they're adding in dudes. They're adding in studs. They're adding in difference makers on every single level. And so why not continue to build in on what you already know? Speed, speed, speed. Silas Bolden from Oregon State. Matthew Golden from Houston, Isaiah Bond from Alabama, and now a guy like Steve Sarkisian, who probably had a few conversations with Nick Black during the entire recruiting process, gets his tight end for the future. You have Gunnar Helm, so that's one tight end that you can trust, and now you can run a ton of more 12 personnel. This opens up the offense. This allows you to be more vertical with the passing attack, and it allows you to fortify your run game with Jaden Blue and CJ Baxter. Just adding in weapons for Quinn Ewers. Wash, rinse, repeat, retool, regroup, reload, re-advance all the way to the college football playoff. That's the way that smart teams think when it comes to building rosters. That's the way that I think Steve Sarkisian is looking at the transfer portal. One more for you. Ben Urasek from Stanford. He's a tight end. I think that we know where tight ends end up landing. There's been a ton of conversations about some other schools fighting in the mix at the late point, but there was already speculation he was going to go to Athens. I think he ultimately does. I think he lands with the likes of the Bulldogs, and they need a tight end because they just lost a two-time John Mackey Award winner. I think that if you actually watch this kid play with the Cardinal the last few years, one season underneath David Shaw, my apologies, one season under Trent Taylor, one season under Taylor, God bless him. So sorry about that one. New Stanford head coach, Troy Taylor, coming over from Sacramento State. You feel like this is a kid who has untapped potential. You know who knows how to get potential out of tight ends? Surprisingly, it's Georgia. Georgia's actually had really good tight end play for over 2 decades, going back to Benjamin Watson, all the way leading up to Brock Bowers. They've always been a security blanket. And so now you get to strut your stuff in the SEC. You get to post up exceptional numbers, play on the biggest stage in the world of college football, and eventually maybe even garner some draft capital with it. This is just the opinion of all of those who know how to build rosters. Add in a special talent, bring in a name that doesn't change our culture. I do think that there will be some players at the very end to go ahead and get Yusuf, but for the most part, I would be very shocked if he doesn't end up with Georgia. But there you have it. Those are my predictions for the top names in the transfer portal. Caelb Downs heads to Athens. Kaydn Proctor goes to Iowa. Lance Hurd goes to Tennessee. Jabbar Muhammad goes to Alabama. Trey Amos heads down to Ole Miss. Amari Niblack goes to Texas. And Ben Urasek, he heads to Athens, Georgia. Hopefully to bring home another national title, though it won't be a three-peat. Sorry about that last bit, Georgia fans. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.